The frost stung my cheeks, my breath instantly turned to vapor, and the snow crunched under my feet. I was alone in the vast winter forest. All I had with me was a box of matches and a small fishing rod. Nothing else. No food, no warmth, no shelter. The first thing to do was to find shelter. I chose a small hollow at the foot of the slope, where the wind was not so strong. The snow there was dense, the perfect place to build a tent. I used spruce branches, fallen limbs and some snow to reinforce the structure. In an hour or two, I had something that would at least temporarily protect me from the cold. As dusk began to fall, I made a fire with one of my precious matches. The flames warmed not only my body but also my soul. Flame is life. I knew that matches were scarce, so the fire had to burn all night. Then I went to the nearest frozen creek. There might be fish under the ice. With my small fishing rod I hollowed out a hole and waited. The fish were slow, but patience is the key to survival. Finally, towards evening, I pulled out the first roach. It was a victory. I couldn't boil it, I didn't have a wok. I had to roast it on a branch by the fire. It was the most delicious fish in my life. The first day was over. The tent protected from the wind, the fire was burning, my stomach was not empty. Tomorrow everything would just begin. Waking up in my shack, I felt my stomach rumbling violently. There were no more fish. There was as much snow as I wanted, but no food to be found. I went to the creek again, tried to catch fish, but all to no avail. Hours passed, my hands were freezing, and my rod was silent. I waded through the woods looking for berries or leftover mushrooms, but winter had taken everything. The whole day passed in an empty search. In the evening, the fire only warmed my body, and my empty stomach kept me awake. Sleep was restless, intermittent. I realized that I would not last long in such a rhythm. In the morning I went deep into the forest again, though my strength was almost gone. I walked slowly, taking short breaks. At one point, behind the dense trees, I noticed something strange, a sheen that couldn't be just snow. As I got closer, I froze. A crashed airplane lay in front of me. Half covered in snow, but a whole body and an open door. At first I couldn't believe my eyes. Then the real expedition began. Inside was everything you could want: boxes of canned food, bottles of water, a box of tools, a first aid kit and, most importantly, a sleeping bag. Big, warm, dense. The kind you could finally get a good night's sleep in. I cried with relief. I made a fire, ate a whole can of stew, then another with beans. It was a feast. For the first time in 3 days, I felt human. At night I settled inside the wreckage of the fuselage, crawled into my sleeping bag and fell asleep instantly. The sleep was deep and peaceful, as if the forest had finally given me a break. The next 7 days were a gift from fate. I set up a shelter in the wrecked plane. Using the metal parts and tools I found, I built a simple stove, connecting the pipe through the broken window. Now I had real heat, and the cold no longer frightened me. I lived in relative comfort, food was plentiful, water came from melted snow, and warmth and shelter were reliable. I began to write the days on the wreckage of the panel, as if to leave a mark: I am here. I live. On the 6th day, while dismantling the rear of the fuselage, I accidentally came across a radio receiver. It was damaged, but not completely broken. I spent several evenings fiddling with it, checking the contacts, soldering wires with a tool I found. On the 9th day, the radio came to life. I heard a noise, then a faint voice. It was a signal. I transmitted the coordinates as accurately as I could and waited. Day 11. Rescue. Early in the morning I heard a distant rumble. It was a helicopter. I ran out with a piece of metal and started waving my arms. A few minutes later, the helicopter hovered over the clearing next to the plane. The rescuers came down smiling and shaking their heads in wonder. How did you survive out here alone? I just smiled and said, I just wouldn't give up.